Okay. So please let me know if I'm inaudible, or if you can't see me properly, or if you can't see the material that I share properly. Please let me know, right? So first let me share the slides with you. Okay. Right. So I believe we have to start today from this point onwards. Am I correct? Right. So before starting this part, let's see what you have learned about in the previous sessions, right? So by now you know what supply chain means. You know how to define a supply chain, and we have explained a simple model of a supply chain to you. And also, we learned about what is logistics, right? We taught you that logistics is a concept which is closely linked to the concept of supply chain management, and we provided this lengthy definition for logistics and logistics management as well, and also what includes or what constitutes logistics. Typically, not all the supply chain activities, but specifically when we talk about logistics, it focuses on the management of inbound and outbound logistics within the supply chain. So what do you mean by inbound logistics? Inbound logistics is we understood that it is the transport, storage, and the delivery of goods or material coming into a business, right? It can be raw materials, it can be parts, right? And inbound logistics could include warehouse management and things like that. And also outbound logistics is also a part of logistics. And what does that mean to? It means storing, transporting, and distributing goods to customers. That means here we focus on finished goods, storing and distributing of finished goods, right? So warehousing, which is related to finished goods, is what we focus on when it comes to outbound logistics, right? So the difference between those two we have explained to you. And we have related to you about push and pull supply chain models as well. Earlier, in a traditional context, we have taught you that supply chains and supply chain management used to take a rather push-based model, right? That means the organization produces whatever they can based on the resources they have, based on the capabilities they have, or based on their strategic objectives. They produce what they can, and then they push it towards the customer, right? So this strategy usually is followed by organizations in order to optimize their uh, production efficiency, as well as to minimize their production cost, right? So although it is efficient in terms of the organization, is it value adding in terms of the customer? Mostly no. Why? Because in this type of model, you do not consider what the customer really wants. You do not focus your attention on how you are going to deliver value to the customer, right? So those are some drawbacks of this push model. So then as time passed, we explained to you that from a push-based model, organizations move towards a pull-based model. So here we try to enhance the quality of the product or the quality of the service that we deliver to the customer, right? We get the feedback from the customer, we identify or we study the demand patterns of the customer, we give prominence to customer needs, and based on what their demands are, we produce what is demanded from the market, right? So in order to facilitate this kind of pull-based system, what should be in place? The organization should have a very good communication system and internally integrated systems, as well as a very good information exchange between other business partners who are connected with the organization. Can be manufacturers, distributors, retailers, right? So among all these business partners, you should have a very good linkage with each of these parties. So then only you will be able to get an idea about the nature of the market, or the nature of the customer need. Right? So that we have explained to you in detail, and I think today I have to start from starting from this slide, the value chain. Right? Okay. So the value chain concept is not something which is new to all of you, right? We have talked about this in the MIS lectures and also in digital business lectures. We have explained this to you. So I think I don't need to go in depth in explaining you the conceptual background of the value chain, right? So first let's look at what is value chain, right? Just to give you a brief understanding. So this slide says, Michael Porter's value chain is a well-established concept for considering key activities that an organization can perform or manage with the intention of adding value for the customer as products and services move from conception to delivered to the customer. So what is the main focus of a value chain? So in value chain, it is a model which helps us to consider, or which helps us to focus on key activities of an organization, which an organization can manage well in order to add better value to their customers, and in order to add better value to the products and services that they deliver to the customers, right? So the next point says, the value chain is a model that describes different value adding activities that connect a company's supply side with its demand side. So in this value chain model, what is being described? Different value adding activities at different stages of your value chain, right? In the in the illustration which I will show you in a little while, you will see this in detail. So in this value chain model, you have several activities divided as primary and support activities, and at each of these stages, value can be added to your production process, to your service delivery, or to your customers, right? So value can be added at each and any of these stages, right? So these different value adding activities, how these different value adding activities that connect a company's supply end as well as the demand end is being explained further, or is being described further by this value chain model, right? So the next point says, we can identify an internal value chain within the boundaries of an organization. So there can be value chains which exist within an organization, within the boundaries of an organization, unique to that particular organization. And also, in addition to that, an external value chain where activities are performed by partners, right? So there can be value chains which are external to the organization, or which are outside the boundary of the organization, which consists of the activities of the value chain which are performed by parties that are external to the organization, the business partners. Might be our suppliers, logistics companies, right? Distributors, warehouses, likewise. Any parties which are outside to the organization, they might also have value chains, right? They are external value chains. Still, those value chains also are useful for us in order to run our business smoothly, right? So therefore, the internal value chain and external value chain both needs to be paid attention to, right? Okay, so the next point says, by analyzing the different parts of the value chain, managers can redesign internal and external processes to improve their efficiency and effectiveness. So when managers consistently analyze the different parts of this value chain, different places where they can add value, right? When they identify those different places where organization adds value to its business processes or the service delivery, right? When they have a better idea about these things, the management has a better idea of how they can redesign their existing processes, right? Not only internal business processes, but also external business processes. Management can get a better idea about how they are going to optimize these processes, or how they are going to streamline these processes in order to deliver better value to their customers, and also in order to improve the efficiency and effectiveness of these different business processes. Because you will see when I show you the illustration of the value chain in the coming slides as well, I told you that value can be added at different stages of this value chain, right? There are different activities at which value can be added to this value chain. So the management can get a better idea about what are the value adding activities of our business, what are the non-value adding activities, what activities can be eliminated because they do not add much value to the existing business process. And if there are certain delays or inefficiencies with some sort of activities, they can also get an idea about how they are going to improve those processes, or how they are going to streamline those processes in order to make them more efficient and more value adding, right? So that it saves the cost, it saves the time, it saves the wastage of resources from the business point of view, as well as they can deliver better value to the customers as well, right? So moving on, benefits for the customer are created by reducing cost and adding value. So through this value chain concept, or by referring to this value chain model, benefits to the customer can be created by one thing, reducing cost as well as adding value. Where can we do this? Within each element of the value chain, such as procurement, manufacture, sales, and distribution. So I told you there are several activities which we focus on within the value chain model. So within each of these elements of the value chain model, the management can see at which places can we reduce the cost, right? At which elements do we waste resources more, right? So likewise, they can take actions to reduce cost, and also then in return deliver better value to consumers, right? For example, if we take the procurement process, what is our current process? You first analyze our current procurement process, and you try to evaluate whether the current procurement process is efficient enough, right? So in order to do this, actually organizations either they benchmark themselves by comparing their value chain with external organizations, right? And they try to compare between different processes, and they try to assess themselves as to the place they are in comparison to a better performing, or let's say a industry leader in their domain, right? Or a better performing organization in their domain. They try to benchmark and they try to compare between these processes, right? So if they feel like their procurement process is underperforming in comparison to this competitor, then they can take measures in order to develop their procurement process. Are there delays in the communication? Are we buying the material from the right producer at the right time, at the right quality and the right quantity? Are they established? Do we have quality standards? And what can we do in order to reduce the delivery times or the delays in delivery, right? So likewise, different measures can be taken, right? So that it minimizes the wastage, reduces the cost, and also adds more value. This can be done for all the other elements of the value chain as well, right? So then the next point says, traditional value chain analysis, figure 6.8a, distinguishes between primary activities that contribute directly to getting goods and services to the customer. Now I told you in this value chain model, you divide the activities of the value chain mainly into two categories. One is primary activities and the other one is secondary activities. So what do we mean by primary activities? Those activities which directly contribute to getting goods or delivering goods and services to the customer, to the consumer. And what do you mean by support activities? They are those activities which provide the inputs and infrastructure that allow the primary activities to take place. So the support activities, they actually provide the necessary inputs and the necessary infrastructure which facilitates the primary activities to take place smoothly, right? Or in other words, these support activities, they actually support the smooth functioning of this direct delivery of or the getting the goods and services from the organization point to the customer point. The support activities, they try to facilitate this process of getting the goods and services to the end consumer, right? So if we look at this figure 6.8a, here there's an illustration of the support activities and the primary activities. So these are the core activities which are directly related to getting the goods and services to our end consumers. And also on the other hand, these activities, they provide the support necessary in order to execute these operations smoothly, right? So at each of these elements or at each of these stages in the value chain, value can be added, right? So the management can see at which instances or at which activities we are performing well and which activities we are underperforming, right? So I think I don't need to explain each and every one of these concepts separately. So do you want me to explain this separately, or is it okay if I move on? Now, for example, if we take firm infrastructure, what sort of activities do we consider here? Here we consider about activities such as accounting and finance, general management, right? Then strategy development, those kinds of things, they come under firm infrastructure. Then under human resource management, we consider recruitment, selections, training and development, performance evaluations, right? Career succession planning, all these things come under human resource management. Then under technology development, we focus on areas such as research, right? Organizational research on maybe new product developments, right? Certain technological researchers and such. Then procurement, you already know this, right? Purchasing of the necessary raw materials or parts or goods that are needed for the organization. So in addition to this, last day you have discussed about what you mean by inbound logistics and outbound logistics, right? And what do you mean by operations? Now here in operations, the main conversion part happens. Main conversion from raw materials to the intended outcome. It may be packaging, right? It may be machining. So, and it can be a manufacturing, right? So likewise, it can be equipment maintenance, right? So likewise, operations can include those kinds of activities. And also in marketing and sales, you may find advertising, promotions, channel selections, and your sales force management, right? All these things might come under marketing and sales. And under services, those after sales services that you provide, right? Warranties and installations, deliveries, all these things we discuss under service category. So at the end of all these processes, the firm, they have their own margin, they have their own profit margin, and before delivering the final good or the service to the consumer, right? So that's just a brief insight to the value chain. So any questions on value chain or what we have discussed so far? If there are any questions, you can ask, right? So I'm going to move on since there are no questions. Right. So what do we have here? Electronic communications can be used to enhance the value chain by making value chain activities such as procurement more efficient. So, now how can digital technologies or electronic communications can be used to enhance this value chain model? Right? What sort of applications can we use in order to enhance the efficiency or the effectiveness of this value chain? One thing, by making value chain activities such as procurement more efficient. Now we saw what the main value chain activities are in the previous slide, right? So we can make these individual activities more efficient, right? For example, like I mentioned earlier, if we take the procurement process, how to, you can decide how to minimize the delays in delivery, or how to make the deliveries more efficient, or how to obtain information from the suppliers more efficiently, how to communicate to the suppliers on your organization's need more efficiently. Right? So likewise, you can make the process more efficient. And also enabling data integration between activities. And also electronic communications or digital technologies can help the organization to make the integration, a higher level of integration, or to achieve a higher level of integration between each of these activities. If we take the primary activities of inbound logistics, operations, outbound logistics, marketing, after sales services, so all these activities can be integrated together in a better way by using electronic communications. Right? Communication delays can be avoided, and the requirements and needs of each department of each of these activities can be communicated clearly along the value chain, right? So the next point says internet technologies can reduce production times and costs by increasing the flow of information. So internet technologies can help to reduce production times, one thing. Now I told you earlier also, by having a good communication with the partners who are connected with your business, right? So, and also within the internal processes of your business, you can reduce production times, right? Now, for example, you can reduce unnecessary time that is taken for production by communicating clearly between the external parties of the organization, such as the wholesalers or retailers and our suppliers, right? If the wholesalers or the retailers, if the information from that end comes to our organization on time as to this is the market requirement, we need this much unit from this particular product, right? If that information can be delivered on time, right, and the organization is able to communicate it on time to our suppliers, so that you can source the supplies, the raw materials and parts on time for the production, so the time taken for this product to finish, right, can be reduced. There won't be unnecessary delays in the production process, right? There won't be unnecessary time lags, right? So the production time can be reduced by enhancing the communication along the supply chain. Now there are also systems where the warehouse, where the final retail store or the outlet themselves can communicate with the suppliers as to this stock is going down, or this particular product is demanded by customers more. Then the suppliers can be ready to supply the raw materials or the parts or the goods to this organization to manufacture that on time, or to deliver that product on time. So if that information is not communicated properly on time, what happens? Then there will be delays in manufacturing. We will not be having raw materials or the parts that we need in time. We won't be able to finish our product on time, right? So the production time can be reduced, and also the unnecessary costs can be reduced as well. Now, when you have an efficient information exchange along the supply chain, for example, when you have accurate information and efficient channel of information exchange, the organization can get a better idea about what is the exact demand from the market for this particular product or service, or this number of units is being demanded, so that when they have that accurate, correct information which is delivered to them on time, then unnecessary production will not take place, because the organization has an idea about what is the exact demand arising from the market, right? And it is being delivered on time to the organization. The information is being delivered on time to the organization, right? So they will produce only what is necessary. So there won't be unnecessary resource wastage. So if you overproduce, that is a wastage of resources. That is an unnecessary cost incurred. As well as if there's excessive inventory within the organization, because this message is not communicated clearly, right? You produce more than what is demanded. For example, let's think, right? So in such a case, what happens? You need warehouses to store this inventory. Maintenance of this inventory has to be undertaken. There's unnecessary capital tied up in this inventory, and there's an inventory holding cost, maintenance cost, right? And also unnecessary labor cost. All these things can be avoided when there's a efficient and improved information exchange across the parties who are joining within the value chain activities of the organization, right? So then moving on, we are going to now move on to a new subtopic, restructuring the internal value chain. So how can we restructure the existing traditional value chain of the organization, right? So the first point says traditional models of the value chain, such as figure 6.8a, that means this one, right? This kind of traditional value chains have been re-evaluated with the advent of global electronic communications. So with the introduction of these global electronic communications or digital technologies, this traditional value chain model has been re-evaluated, or it has been somewhat restructured. Right? It can be suggested that there are some key weaknesses in the traditional value chain model. So what are the drawbacks or the minus or the negative points of the traditional value chain model? One thing is, it is most applicable to manufacturing of physical products as opposed to providing services. So although we say that in a supply chain, you deliver products and services both to the consumer, in this value chain, the main focus is for a production organization, right? So when you look at this model also, when you look at the elements of this model also, you can see that it is actually mainly intended for a manufacturing organization and not towards a service organization, right? So that is one of the drawbacks. And then the next thing is, it is a one-way chain involving with pushing products to the consumer. It does not highlight the importance of understanding consumer needs. That's true, right? So we focus on how we source raw materials, or how we procure them, how we process them, how we store them, how we process them, and how we market them, and how we provide after-sales services. So this is more of a push nature model, which you learned about on the last day, right? So this kind of chain of activities does not focus attention on the backward integration of the processes. That means how we are going to integrate the needs and the demands of the consumers to our value chain activities. That part is not highlighted through this traditional value chain model, right? So that is also another drawback of this model. Then the third point, the internal value chain does not emphasize the importance of value networks. That is also another drawback. Now, we focus on the internal value chain of the organization. We think about how we are going to enhance the value and the efficiency of these activities, but we do not consider about the value networks that might be existing in the industry. Now, for example, our organization value chain is not the only thing that we are dealing with, right? we are actually interacting with value chains of multiple business partners within the industry, right? Now, for example, if we take Microsoft, right, a company like Microsoft, they have their own internal value chain, but also they are a part of a larger value network which comprises of multiple partners within a value network, right? Which have their own individual value chains, right? For this, for example, for Microsoft, they combine with software developers, right? App developers, then system analysts, right? And then system trainers are there, and then on the other hand, chip manufacturers are there, and so likewise, multiple parties who have their own value chains get integrated with the Microsoft's value chain as well, right? So, and also not only that, if we consider the consumer end, right, the value chains of, if we take Microsoft products, they are being used by domestic consumers, then business consumers, right, corporate level consumers, and then academics or education purpose. So likewise, these products are being consumed by different types of parties who have their own individual value chains, right? So this value network concept is being ignored by the traditional value chain, right? And not only that, so in addition to that, sometimes this traditional value chain is also criticized in terms of it being too complex, right? It has so many activities that management needs to pay attention to, and it's not easily understandable. So that is also one critique that this traditional Michael Porter's value chain gets pointed at, and also certain things such as the cost being higher than the revenue. That means to restructure these and internal activities to make them more value adding or to make them more efficient, the cost that you have to incur may exceed the benefit that you deliver from the restructuring of these activities, right? Sometimes that also happens. So likewise, those kinds of critics are there for the traditional value chain concept, right? So moving on, due to these kinds of drawbacks and negative points, a revised form of the value chain has been suggested by Days et al. And adoption of this model is presented in figure 6.8b. So by this, if we look at this figure 6.8b, you can see that the traditional value chain model has been very much restructured, right? So what does the next point say? This value chain starts with the market research process, emphasizing the importance of real-time environmental scanning, which is made possible through electronic communication links with distributors and customers. So if you look at the first activity in the restructured value chain, it starts with market research. So in order to effectively carry out market research, electronic communications become helpful for the organization. With the links that the organization has, or with the electronic communication links that the organization has with the suppliers, not only the suppliers, now if we take the downstream supply chain in this case, especially with the consumers, with the retailers and the distributors, the organization can gain a very good feedback about the nature of the market and the nature of the demand, right? What sort of needs are consumers pursuing more and more? What do they want in order to satisfy their needs? So this kind of idea can be obtained very easily. And not only that, also what are our competitors doing? How are our competitors delivering value to our consumers, right? What do we need to do in order to offer better value to our consumers in comparison to our competitors? Likewise, a thorough market research can be enabled by the help of electronic communications, right? Especially if we even simply look at processes such as following, let's say, an e-commerce site. There you can easily get consumer feedback, right? Through consumer reviews, through the comments that they post on the products that you have advertised, and by looking at your sales volumes as well. And in addition to that, by the ratings that the consumers give to your products, right? And also by the feedback that your distributors and retailers, wholesalers give to you regarding your products, you can get a better idea about the nature of the market that you are participating in, right? Then the next thing, after market research, the organization moves on to new product development. So based on the inputs or based on the facts and information you gain from market research, the organization can now safely move to develop a new product based on the information gathered from the market. Then, according to the nature of this new product development, you can refine the marketing strategy that you use in order to promote, in order to sell, in order to advertise about this product, in order to communicate about this product, right? The marketing strategy you may have to refine. And also now you have developed your product, you have refined your marketing strategy. So before you start manufacturing, you may have to procure materials, right? And from your suppliers, and then finally you move on to manufacturing the product, and then manage and selling and fulfillment. Now you can see here, before coming to manufacturing or before coming to procurement straight away, here a considerable focus has been given to market research and new product development, unlike in the traditional model where this type of need identification or studying the nature of the market was not present. But in the restructured value chain, you give prominence to activities like that, so that you get a better idea about the nature of the market. So here, before coming to stage of procurement, you go through all these stages, right? So this next point says, for example, leading retailers now monitor on an hourly basis how customers are responding to promotional offers on their website and review competitors' offers and then revise them accordingly. So like I mentioned earlier, if the company is maintaining an e-commerce site, right? If the company is maintaining a website, those companies, they continuously monitor the online activity of their consumers, right? What sort of responses do they give to the products that we promote? When we put a new post on our social media, for example, how do consumers react to that, right? And also, how do consumers respond to the competitors' offers, competitors' promotions, right? Competitors' advertisements. So they look at these things very closely. They closely monitor these responses and reactions and feedback of the consumers, and accordingly, they revise their strategies if needed, right? If the organization feels like our competitor has gained more attraction than our products or than our advertisements or promotions, they may try to review what sort of offers their competitors have offered, right? So then they may try to retaliate with the competitor. They may try to offer a similar sort of package or a similar offer to the consumer in order to keep up with this competition, right? And also, similarly, manufacturers such as Cisco have feedback forms and forums on their site that enable them to collect information from customers and channel partners. So this Cisco actually is operating in the technological domain, right? Where IT products and then network solutions and those kinds of technical nature products and services are being provided by Cisco. So they have their feedback forms and forums on their own e-commerce site, on their own website. And this helps them to collect information from Cisco's customers and different channel partners that can feed through to new product development. So based on the feedback that you get from the consumers, you may get an idea about what sort of product we really need to deliver to the customer. if the customer is showing dissatisfaction to certain features of your product or service, then the organization may redesign, redevelop, or restructure some parts of this product or the service that they deliver to their customer. And also based on the feedback from your channel partners, such as the distributors, the logistics organizations, or the retailers also, they can give you an idea about the movement of your product. Is your product moving at a reasonable rate, right? Is it moving fastly, or is it just staying in shelves without being sold? What sort of questions do consumers usually ask before purchasing these kinds of products? So these kinds of feedback are very important for the organization in order to decide on the nature of the product they should deliver, how they should deliver it, and in designing the marketing strategy of the organization. All these information they gather are very, very important, right? Then the next point, as new product development occurs, the marketing strategy will be refined, and at the same time, steps can be taken to obtain the resources. So what does that